Okay, we are live. Hi, this is William Ramsey. Welcome to William Ramsey Investigates. On today's show, I have a very special guest. His name is Tony Arterburn. Last name is spelled Arterburn. I've been on his show kind of talking about my stuff, but he's coming on today. The title of this talk is going to be Parapolitics and Precious Metals, both very important topics right now in American history and in the world, really. There's a lot going on with this whole BRICS movement and move to gold-based currency in other countries, not in the U.S. They don't seem to be too interested in about that. But Tony operates, you can see here if you're watching on YouTube, X, or Rockin', it's arterburn.news, and he also runs Free World FM with a lot of great hosts. So people check that out, and a lot of great streams and things like that. And he also operates Wise Wolf, which is a gold and silver exchange out of Branson, Missouri, and partially in Texas. So we're going to cover a bunch of different topics today, a lot of kind of current events, which really are parapolitical. So I'm glad to have him on my show. So Tony Arterburn, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me, William. First of all, I'm a huge fan of your podcast. Last night in my off-grid cabin, I was listening to the episode you just put up on David Ferry. And we were saying off air, but talking off air about this, but really isn't anything like your podcast out there. So I really love the content, love the deep dives, and it's an honor to be here.
Thanks. Awesome. I appreciate that. Yeah, there's a lot about Ferry that the public didn't know, and I didn't know, really. So it's I tried to kind of go and look at different sources. I think it's really kind of the armchair historian in me of like wanting to see the more nuanced kind of history, and the availability today of looking at this other research that other people have gotten, FOIAs or something, really is important, because a lot of people haven't seen. My cat is grinding on my leg. What are you doing? A lot of people haven't seen that material before. So I think it's important. But for people who may not have heard your name, Tony, maybe you can talk a little bit about your background. I know you're been in the military, and you have a very successful gold and silver business. So maybe you can introduce people to that.
Yeah, I was in the military right after high school. I was a paratrooper in military police, part of the first Army company on the ground after 9/11 in Kandahar, Afghanistan. So I got to see a lot of the military industrial operations up close. I was on the outskirts of what was then the American Empire, and learned a lot about history through living it, through reading, and that's really shaped the rest of my life. And I look back on that all the time as, a lot of lessons learned, William. And, I'm anti-war now. I think you and I talked about that when we did our podcast on Paratruther about Aleister Crowley and some of the things that research that you've done on 9/11 and the deep state. And that's really what, over time, what drew me into the precious metals business, because they always say in journalism or any kind of investigations to follow. So I just continued to do that. I grew up with a father who was an entrepreneur and really just self-starter, somebody who built up from zero. And he chartered a bank at 28 years old. And of course, I was around that kind of life, seeing things built and looking at finance. But I really didn't start to unlock a lot of what I talk about last about 12 years or so about the time I ran for Congress in North Texas. And I started to look really deeply into the Federal Reserve after the candidacy of Ron Paul, and I started to ask the question, what's currency and money, and what's this history of our monetary system? And when you really dig into it, William, what you find is that the lifeblood of the military industrial complex, the deep state, the American empire, is fiat, fake money. You can't have the level of corruption that we have today, never before seen on this planet. You can't have that level of corruption without fake money. And so, fake money, fake politics, fake wars with real consequences. And so that's what I do in the precious metals business. And of course, I do, like you said, parapolitics. I have a radio show I've been doing for many years now called the Arterburn Radio Transmission, which is ART. And I started out in regular, I say standard conservative talk radio, and I've long since crossed the Rubicon of being being a conspiracy analyst, like Gore Vidal said. But I think that's really where all the scholarship is. That's your career and your books. I mean, this is, you look into the elites and how they plan and shape our reality. I get to do a show every week with the legendary Don Jeffries, who wrote Hidden History. I'm pretty sure you've had him on your show, and you guys
many times.
He's just a great human being and a fantastic researcher, and somebody I look up to. And so I get to talk to him every week. And so, look, I'm in the realm of parapolitics. It's not just finance, but what I see coming, and I think part of my mission is when you're looking at the underlying factors of a dying system and the danger when you've got that system backed into a corner. It's like a wild animal, a caged animal. It's rabid and probably worse than that. And we're looking at the dying dollar system. I don't think the average person or even people that are even into alt media completely grasp the consequences of what it's going to mean to lose the world's reserve currency status. And there's a lot of history with that too. Going back to Bretton Woods in 1944, in New Hampshire when they set up the new economic world order towards the end of World War II. That's where you established the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, and the World Bank. They pegged gold, and basically the dollar is the gold standard at $35 an ounce. And that lasted until 1971 when we broke the Bretton Woods Agreement, when Richard Nixon took us off the gold standard. So now, and again, this is some history that most people don't know. The dollar is the world's oldest surviving fiat currency. The average fiat currency, and fiat means by decree, it means they say so. So it's backed by nothing. It's free floating. And it's the world's oldest surviving fiat currency. The average lifespan is 26 years. So we've doubled that. And every other currency after 1971 followed the United States into a fiat system. So what you have is this massive expansion of the money supply. And I think anybody that's truly thinking knows we have corruption in this country prior to 1971. We had massive corruption. They started the Federal Reserve in 1913, but they had to work a lot harder than they do today. Now the deep state literally just covers stuff up by going to the printing press. And so the consequences of that, of wars of choice, of the expansion of the welfare state, the massive immigration that we've had, which is, demographic shifts and population replacement, that all requires fiat currency. And so you have this massive expansion of the money supply, William. And I'll give you an example. It took us from 1776 to 1979, around the time I was born, to go $1 trillion into national debt. And as you and I were talking off air, now we do that every 90 days.
Right.
Those are facts.
It's extraordinary, yes.
Yeah, so those are facts. I mean, the wheels are off. Nobody even talks about fiscal responsibility anymore. So I think the danger is looking at the graphs. Like, here's some other food for thought. In 2001, prior to 9/11, 75% of all global financial transactions went on in dollars. Now it's 43% and declining rapidly because of things like the BRICS nations, which are Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. They just added Saudi Arabia, and they have 25 other countries in the periphery that are looking to join. They're tired of the weaponization of the dollar. We have 40 different sanctions on 36 different countries. The United States is at war abroad to maintain hegemonic domination of the world's financial system, and we're losing because of our arrogance. And I think there's a great deal of it that's a controlled demolition, if we're being honest. I don't think that there is no strategy anymore from the ruling elites that have these positions of power. I think this is what Hillary Clinton called managed decline. So we're looking at managed decline across the board. So these are very uncertain times. The financial networks are not going to talk about this. They'll just keep telling you to buy FANG stocks, and Jim Cramer will yell about something going up 5%. But what you're really watching, and look, gold has hit its all-time high I think it's been like, it's hit its all-time high like 5 times in the last 30 days. It's over
Wow.
$300 an ounce. I was just on Tinfoil Hat. I flew out to do an in studio with Sam Tripoli, and we were talking about that. We were watching it live on the ticker as I'm.
Wow. Wow.
It's breaking its all-time high while we're talking one more time. And I said, so, and again, what I wanted to point out to his audience, and what I'll talk about to yours, is that gold is not hitting its all-time high. The dollar is hitting its all-time low. What you're watching is an inversion. Gold doesn't necessarily go up in value. It maintains, as a commodity in a relative space, it maintains its purchasing power. Like, a 1 ounce gold coin from 1933 would buy you, the same amount of clothing and food and land and oil as it does today, for the most part, within some margins of change. But that's the purchasing power that it maintains. The dollar, on the other hand, is down, like from the time of the Federal Reserve, like 99% of purchasing power has diminished since
Right.
71. Since 71, we're down 75%. And I don't even think those numbers are truly reflective of the damage that's been done. So again, I'm in the precious metals business for a reason. The two things together, the parapolitics and the precious, get a better grasp for myself even on where we truly.
Right, but it's also important too, because to understand these moves, they're not telling Americans the full story. They had a guy on, it was the head of the Federal Reserve now. I forgot his name, but he said it's unsustainable, the current trajectory, but they're just continuing that trajectory. There's no spending cuts or retraction or desire to make a new system or anything like that. It's just, we're just going to keep going until splat. And when that splats, for people, maybe I know a little bit. I know what happened to the hyperinflation in Germany after World War One, which was a societal disaster. So if we hit this hyperinflation, people are going to move off the dollar. Like, you literally could be trading in kind of gold tokens or something, or crypto, not that far away, right? Would you agree with that?
100%. And I think, again, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, the BRICS, they are already setting up that system. They're building a parallel system outside of the dollar. They're not even speculating in the dollar anymore. Countries around the world are dumping it. So what do you do? That's called money velocity. When the American empire can't just print and print and print and still have usage of their currency, you start to see even further decline in purchasing power. So yes, people will start trading in other commodities, other currencies. That's why, they're fighting cryptocurrency at the federal level every way that they can. I think they finally acquiesced to some of the money powers who said, in my opinion, the Bitcoin ETFs, William, were set up so that they could offset a lot of their losses, because the current financial and stock system is built on fiat. It's built on fake. This isn't your father's stock market. They don't even work off profit anymore. It's about ESG. It's environmental social governance. So you see these companies go woke and go broke, except they kind of never do. They just lose billions and continue to plow on and still promote ESG. So it's not about profit anymore. I think that they're in real trouble across the board. The financial elites, the empire itself, the military-industrial complex. And 3 years ago or so, the Pentagon ran a Gen Z Bitcoin revolt war game, where they were wargaming against a Gen Z breakaway from the dollar. So they're paying attention to the loss of usage of the dollar and what that would do. I know I was part of the tail end of the invasion of Iraq, Mr. Bush's neocon war, which really to me was sort of a ritual, a Babylonian ritual. I think you and I have discussed that before. But the Iraqi parliament has voted to ban the usage of dollars.
Wow, I didn't know that. Wow.
I mean, again, this was originally it was Operation Iraqi Liberation, until Ari Fleischer figured out that spelled oil. That's no kidding. They really did. They spelled it oil.
Right. They took over oil fields, I think, in Iraq and Syria. And Trump tried to get out of it. He said, well, you can't. We already own, we conquered those, right? Isn't there some story like that too?
Well, that's right. It's one. I was talking to an old wildcatter guy. It was a guy who'd been around us, for decades, going and drilling all over the world and setting up contracts. And he told me long before Trump ran for office, he said, "Hey, you know what's going on in Syria? You know who owns all of those pipelines, the pipelines and the resources to get to those pipelines?" He said it's a private companies, they're shell companies owned by the CIA. So it's
Yeah, I'm
literally
not surprised. Yeah.
offshoot, to fund these projects that they've had for decades. So yeah, that's part of the counter government inside the government. I mean, Trump ordered the generals out of Syria, what, 3 or 4 times? They just stayed. So basically treason. If he really did mean it, if he really did order them out, uh,
Right.
then we have row. I don't think we have to stretch that far to realize that the deep state runs this government now.
Yeah, more powerful than the president.
Yeah,
And they installed Hussein too. The CIA did. That's a
absolutely.
known fact.
Did you ever see that picture of Donald Rumsfeld shaking hands with Hussein?
Yes, I did. I remember that very well. There was actually a really interesting story. They got rid of the old guy, I forgot his name, but Hussein was waiting in the wings with a bunch of CIA agents in Lebanon, modern day, Lebanon, and so he was just waiting there for the whole overthrow or the putsch, and then they just drove him in there, and that was it.
1979. It was the same year that the CIA started the database, also known as Al Qaeda. They also hired, in the same year, they started to work with an agent called Tim Osman, as you know. That was Osama bin Laden at the Pentagon. That was to fight the Mujahideen. And of course, the Ba'athist Party, the Baathists would have direct ties to Central Intelligence and Western Intelligence. So, yeah, it's. I've always thought about Zelensky, with him running around acting so arrogant. I thought he should really look into what happens to U.S. allies over time.
Good point. They are dispensable if you don't play ball. But I mean, I think that's interesting. The point, it ties into this fiat currency and really the expansion of American power and just printing money that for these crazy wars that only can be financed through fiat currency, right? I don't think we would be able to maintain the reach with a standard gold-backed currency. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, not even close. The lifeblood of the military-industrial complex is fake money, and you can see it just really going off the rails after 1971. And in my opinion, one of the reasons that Nixon took us off the gold standard, and you go back to 1963 and the deep state murders JFK. He had signed an executive order on keeping the silver in the currency. He'd also printed $5 bills direct from the Treasury, not through the Fed. And there was only 2 presidents in history that ever did that. One was JFK, and the other was Lincoln. They were both shot in the head in public. And I'm not even a fan of the greenback. What I'm saying is they printed it away from the Fed, and I think there's consequences to that. And in my opinion, as a coin dealer, I think that the 1964 Kennedy half dollar was a way to mock JFK. I think when they put JFK in the last silver half dollar ever struck by this country has his face on it. I think there was a message in that. That's just me personally, because I find that to be highly strange. He's got his right the next year after Lyndon Johnson is installed and runs for re-election. But the world started to take notice in 1965, William, because we took the silver out of all of our coinage. And if you pay attention to history, that's the first step in a declining empire, when they debased the currency. So we took the metals out of our coinage. The world took notice. In the late 1960s, the president of France, de Gaulle, sent warships over to collect his gold for the country of France, and to get those dollars that they'd repatriated. And so the gold window was really getting busy. So Richard Nixon closed it because we had the guns and butter in 1960 in Vietnam. LBJ called it the Great Society on the Mekong. Kind of echoes of George W. Bush with democratizing mankind, all that stuff. But I think the world took notice. We had to go off the gold standard. So in 71, gold was $35 an ounce. In 79 or into 79, it's near $800 an ounce. Now, most people think, wow, what an investment. And I guess you're kind of right, because it is an investment at some level. But gold really didn't go up. What you have is the loss of purchasing power of the dollar. The Hunt brothers in Texas drove the price of silver up to $52.50 an ounce in 1980, and they were dismantled and bankrupted by the deep state, in my opinion, for exposing that, because nobody else ever did that again. They never ran it. Nobody's ever taken the silver market and tried to buy up all the physical silver. They maintained the paper. And that's what's happened for the last many decades, is that the powers that be maintain a low gold and silver price by using the paper markets. It's very sophisticated and honestly beyond my pay grade, but I do know that that's what's happening, because at the current level, the rest of the world is moving away from our exchanges. Central banks around the world are breaking records by buying gold, so that no longer can you really suppress it. And that price is really going off the rails and showing the weakness of the dollar. But to answer your question, absolutely. You go back to September 10th, 2001. What was Donald Rumsfeld talking about?
$2.3 trillion unaccountable at the Pentagon.
Right. You can't do that. You can't lose $2.3 trillion. And it's funny. We throw those numbers around like it's sustainable. But I ask people like on my show, I said, how long ago was a trillion seconds, like in time? Like how long ago was a trillion seconds? I mean, anyone want to take a guess? It's 32,000 years.
Wow, it's just incredible.
Right, a billion seconds, 32 years ago, and a trillion is 1,000 billion. So it's 32,000 years ago. When I was talking to Sam Tripoli, he made me laugh because we talked about Aleister Crowley a little bit. But I mentioned that if you were able to take enough paper, which there isn't enough paper on planet Earth, but let's say you could, and you wanted to print 1 trillion $1 bills, and you stretch them end to end, they would reach the sun. They would go 93 million miles. So these numbers aren't sustainable. Or I've read other things, like if you took $1 trillion bills and you were able to print them, you could carpet the state of Oklahoma. Like, this isn't something that's sustainable.
And it's the inflation is going crazy. I think it was, who was it who said inflation is taxation without legislation? So it's kind of a tax on everybody who's worked hard in this country, who has savings or 401k or anything like that. It's just incredible how irresponsible the leaders are. Like, people need to wake up. Like, these people are literally there's going to be a huge splat. There's no avoiding it. I don't know how they can avoid it other than war.
So you hit on it. And it's like Gerald Celente says, when all else fails, they take you to war. That, in my opinion, as a veteran, that's where, I start feeling that familiar gut crunch, that pain of, I think they're gearing us up for a conflict. I don't know that they have a lot of choice. And again, maybe we can avoid that by people becoming aware of that. That's what's happening. But they'll need a foreign adversary to blame the crash on. And of course, the crash will precipitate the need I'm putting this in quotations, for a digitized central bank digital currency, which is basically the end of human freedom at all, if whatever's left of it, the end of politics. But that they need a crisis. They'll need to blame it on somebody. But the good news is the bright shining light in all this is that the current deep state degenerates, they're not as smart as their predecessors. They're not as smart as their ancestors, who were really clever. And they got sloppy, over the years. I mean, JFK was a lot more masterful, as far as covering up than, let's say, 9/11. But they're phoning it in now. I mean, they don't even try. So I'm not so, again, I don't subscribe to them like, otherworldly powers. I just think they have a printing press and they have no conscience. But that doesn't mean that you're smart and you're always going to win. I do think that there's a lot of people waking up to the fact that we have fake money, and that leads to fake politicians and fake news. And I'm more optimistic than I was 10 years ago. Let's put it that way.
Right. Fake defense. Like imagine spending $800 billion and there's not as much to show for it, and a bunch of like lame planes that don't work as well. And just, I mean, it's just an incredible way. It's totally irresponsible. They're fiscally totally irresponsible. And can you tell me what fiat currency has lasted over 100 years?
I don't. The only one I can think of, I was just reading the history of, there was a great history, and there's an article up on Zero Hedge of the history of John Law. He was this Scottish kind of entrepreneur, aristocrat who convinced the King of France in the early or the late 1700s to go to a fiat currency, and it looked really good for a little while, and then you start to see the collapse of it. It had to do with their territory in New Orleans in the New World. It was it's a really great lesson in what happens. It looks good on paper. You start to expand the money supply. Everybody's rich for a while, and then it collapses. I think Marco Polo ran into a system where the Chinese had used a fiat. It was based off like the bark of a certain tree, and it lasted a little while. But the average lifespan is 26 years. So all fiat currencies go to zero in history. There's not one surviving. And again, nobody dives to the bottom of the ocean to get cash. Like there's gold, and because if you have a Roman coin, that Roman coin is still worth something because there's gold in it. The old the era of gold and silver in Rome. And I've owned a couple of the Roman gold coins from Constantinople, and the reason that they're valuable is because of the gold. Again, all these currencies throughout history that get debased, they usually go to zero.
Right. Zimbabwe was like printing $1 trillion bills or something crazy like that. It just didn't make sense. And I think they're going back to a gold-based or something-based currency now. Like somebody gets smarter than, was it Mugabe who was there? Like they just realized, like, and then the other thing that fiat does is it moves the power lever towards the state or people who run the state, right? Because they're the ones printing the stuff. They know where this fake money goes. But the average citizen becomes actually a form of enslavement because there's more money. That means more debt and less inherent wealth based upon a real metal currency, right? Would you agree with that?
Transfer of wealth. I mean, when the elites print fake money, they're going to buy up all the assets, have you out there working and turning the levers and keeping the lights on and doing all the manual things to prop up the energy in their system. There's a great example of this in that pamphlet that was found in an IBM copier in 1986. Are you familiar with Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars?
Yes, very much so.
Right. So Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars, the opening chapter is about money as energy. And fiat fake currency is money, right? And that's what they use to prop up their system. And I reread that the other day before I went on Tinfoil Hat, just because I was thinking about it as the begin. And again, you can dispute that document, but there's something to that. The idea of that the elites use, in my opinion. And I'll give you an example. If you went to the inauguration of George Washington in the 1790s. If you went to his inauguration and bought a pair of shoes to go, that same pair of shoes is going to cost you the exact same in 1902, because there was no inflation in the 19th century. We had a bimetallic system. As a matter of fact, the money was so strong that you had the revolution, or the political revolution of William Jennings Bryan, where they wanted free silver. And you've been talking a lot about his grandson. That's been
right, supposedly William Joseph Bryan claimed, but yeah, he had a famous speech, Cross of Gold, right? Yeah. That's like one of the most famous American speeches about this precious metals, right?
Right. What that was that we had such a hard currency that the populism of the day was, let's inflate this money supply with this. We hit the Comstock lode out in Nevada. Let's dump silver into the system to bring down, some of these debts will be paid easier. Again, they weren't talking about just running fake money. They wanted to dump silver in. It's called free silver. That's where you also get the allegory of the Wizard of Oz. Cowardly Lion is William Joseph Bryan, and the Yellow Brick Road is gold and all that, and the greenback is the Emerald Palace. But right. you have all that. That was a big thing at the end of the 19th century was just, the populism of that. And I think the money powers, they engineered the crisis of 1907, 1910, on November 22nd, 1910, 53 years to the day of the murder of JFK. They have the meeting on Jekyll Island to come up with the concept of the Federal Reserve Bank. So again, the deep state, the ruling powers, even the quote from Rothschild from the 19th centuries, and I care not who sits on the British throne. The person who controls the British Empire is the person who controls the British money supply, and I control the British money supply. They tell you what they're doing. So they control the money supply. We, the plebes and the serfs, we have to deal with their fake money. They don't like it that we can still buy gold. I don't think they like it that we can buy Bitcoin. But the elites traffic in assets. They don't hoard cash. They use debt to avoid taxes. Stuff they don't teach you in school. They definitely don't teach what we've been talking about in any school.
Right. Intentionally.
Right.
They don't want to tell. They want to keep the lie going that the Federal Reserve is like the Department of Defense. And that was kind of the Federal Reserve very cleverly put into play. Like they created the crisis of, I think it was 1911 or something like that. And then the solution is the Federal Reserve. Let us handle it.
Yeah,
it was just J.P. Morgan and Rothschild and all these other bums.
The 1907 crisis that precipitated the meeting on Jekyll Island, and there's some real skullduggery that they used to get the Federal Reserve Act passed. And of course, it's unconstitutional, William. And if you look at the U.S. Constitution, only Congress has the power to coin money, right? Coin it, and it has to be gold and silver specie. It's in the Constitution. They just went an end run around that, kind of like a Zbigniew Brzezinski. You got to have an end run around sovereignty. So that's what they did with the Federal Reserve Act. And no one's really ever, aside from Charles Lindbergh Sr. In power, no one's really challenged it.
Right. I mean, because it's backed by very powerful people. The real money power, just like you said, the Rothschild power. But there's been always huge banking wars. I think Andrew Jackson should have been dead, I think, by a banking assassin, if I remember correctly, but the gun misfired. And he was like he had vicious fights for this. They were trying to make a non-standard congressional constitutional bank. Absolutely. So it's been around.
He wanted "I killed the bank" on his tombstone, by the way. He called them a den of vipers and thieves. He said, "I'm going to rout you out." And he killed the second bank of the United States. We didn't have a central bank. It's kind of weird, William. We had, and this is, the synchronicities, but the lifespan of J.P. Morgan was the first year we didn't have a central bank till we got the Federal Reserve. So 1837 to 1913 was the lifespan of J.P. Morgan.
It's amazing. It's really amazing. And it's just like it's been this battle all the way from really the foundation. And it's interesting how they've kind of been able to do these unconstitutional things without, Ron Paul, how many people really fight against the Federal Reserve in Congress? It's like
nobody.
People with that. Yeah, nobody.
When I was in the 90s, when I was a teenager, that was a big deal. Like the GOP was going to take back Congress. We had a contract with America, and this whole thing was we're going to do budgetary cuts. And now you don't even hear that anymore. Like nobody even talks about it. They don't talk about the Fed. They don't talk about cuts. It really.
It's incredible. Like they just printed they've printed the most money, like I think you said, but they printed, I think, like 50% of the money in circulation within the last 10 years. Is that right? Or in the last 20 years?
Yeah, the figures that I've seen, and of course, we use the word print, you and I do that all the time because it just seems natural. But these are like keystrokes and additions they're electronic simply because there isn't enough paper that exists on the planet to do these type of this printing. But it's the figures that I've seen are 80% of all the dollars ever created, were done in the last 60 months.
It's just astonishing. Like the American public should be aghast, like in shock at what's happened. And it's financing all the stuff. Like you're literally giving people who have never paid into the system, like $5,000 bank cards, like just crazy stuff. The Biden administration is unhinged, but they're just doing the most crazy stuff. And the people who paid in expecting these services are not going to get their services. Their services are going to be diluted all over the country, wherever these invading forces are that don't even have the values of the US. Like that was one of the fundamental ideas of this country, is like you come in and you become part of the American experiment, not just like somebody walks in and says, "Hey, give me some money." It's off the charts, and this is being facilitated by this fiat currency. This non-accountable nonsense. It's so crazy. It's really crazy. Tony, do you have any time for some questions?
You got it.
Yes, sir. Joker asks, "What's the best way to build equity these days?" And thoughts on crypto.
Well, I'm in the precious metals business, but I started out really in the Bitcoin ATM. I owe Bitcoin big time because I saw the value of it early, and I've always been interested in coins and history and value. I've been against the fiat system for many years. So in 2016, I got into the Bitcoin ATM business, and I love Bitcoin. I still buy Bitcoin every single day. I will take Bitcoin for gold and silver items. I like the crypto space. I have a podcast called the Wise Wolf Gold and Crypto Show. I'm going to be loading up some new shows very soon. But we go into both, and we talk about precious metals. We talk about crypto. The best thing to do is learn how to use it. The best equity you can have is to understand how to use it, how to store crypto, how to safely transact it. That's a great place to start. The other thing with precious metals is to get physical precious metals, because the one thing that you have when you hold a gold coin, you hold a silver coin in your hand, is there's no counterparty risk in that. It's not like a stock. It's not like a certificate. That's yours. And again, the prices of precious metals, in my opinion, right now are cheap because we are not truly looking at the devaluation of the dollar, especially in things like silver. Silver is stupidly cheap. And it was $52.50 an ounce in 1980. It's $28 an ounce right now on the spot market. That's stupid because in $50 in 1980 could get you about $300 worth of things today. There's much more need for silver today in the world than there was in 1980. So none of those things make sense. I'm not giving investment advice, but I do think learn about coins, learn about how to store bullion, where to buy from. And, again, get your own wallets on crypto. I like the Exodus wallet. It's simple. Those are your keys. If it's your keys, it's your wallet. That's just an easy, free way to set up a cryptocurrency wallet that you control that's outside of an exchange. But really, it's just about knowledge. So the best equity, in my opinion, is learning.
Right. And another question is, have you heard anything about Texas going back to the gold standard?
Heard about that. And I have a shop in Texas. I'm from Texas, and I stay pretty much in tune with the politics there. I think we'll see. It'll be a long time before you have any sort of Texas currency or Texas anything outside of the Fed system. There's a lot of window dressing by the GOP there, but they're they're a paper tiger. Not real any opposition to the New World Order, in my opinion. The Texas GOP is kind of lays down. So I don't think you'll see anything until the voters will become more and more and more aware, and you'll get better candidates eventually down the road, maybe a third party or something. But the Republican Party certainly puts a lot of impediments to anything that stands up to the Federal Reserve System. So I'm not optimistic there. I do like the fact that they have the gold and silver vaults and storage. They tried to do a digital backed gold currency this last summer, and it failed, or at least get it on the ballot. Stepping back from all of that, we don't need a state, William, to have a currency, to have money. We have a worldwide gold standard. You can go to my website, you can go to Wolfpack.Gold, or you can go to goldprice.org. Gold is gold around the world, whether you're in Boston or Bangladesh. To me, that's a clear representation of what value is across the world. So I don't really need a state for that. I don't need a state for Bitcoin. I just think when a state or a government gets involved in currency, there's too many openings for shenanigans and corruption and deception. Why not just let the free market and the open market decide? Private banks can do a better job. If the government needs to collect taxes, tell me what, give me a list of things that you accept. I know
Right.
that's happened,
Right.
but
I don't think they would like that system. The thing is, the state is like a giant blood sucking tick that
right.
needs to live off the people. That's why the taxes are so high in some of these things. I mean, you can see the differences in taxes. For example, Texas and California, you're getting better services in Texas with less state, whereas in California you have this bloated state, high taxes, and the services are terrible. So like, it's a perfect example of like why they don't need this kind of why they shouldn't be allowed to have this fiat currency, for one, and also they shouldn't have this kind of just license to spend and create debt. It's totally crazy. Like, it'll take it out of a proper, precious metals type system would take all that misspending. And then the thing is like, you're attracting people who are irresponsible into the political system as well. So it has these kind of the fiat system has these second and tertiary impacts on the whole of like corruption of society in general, I think.
Absolutely. And it trickles down into everything. Imagine California, if it had its own printing press. That's America.
Yeah, it would be a disaster.
I mean, that's just and they just go to the well and they keep printing. And I don't think they understand the concept of where money comes from or value or what debt is. But we're about to find out. There was something that always makes me laugh. I say it all the time, but there was a speechwriter for Nixon. His name was Herbert Stein, and Pat Buchanan would quote him all the time as a joke. But he would say Herbert Stein had a law. It was Herbert Stein's law. It said if something cannot go on forever, it will stop. I think that's Herbert Stein's law, and I think we're about to see.
We're gonna have a hard stop, though. It's gonna be a splat. Like, yeah, yipes. Neutral observation asked, where do you think the economy will be by 2030? Great question.
I think by 2030, as we reach the apex of the Great Reset and the New World Order agenda, I think that the United States will be in a quasi-depression. I don't think it'll look like the 1930s, but there will be a lot of austerity. There will be loss of purchasing power of the dollar. I think we'll be involved in some kinetic wars. It may not be a cataclysm or something. We'll be involved kinetically. Politics will be further. There'll be breakaways, like as far as third parties. It's going to be a mess. That's my opinion. I don't even want that opinion. I hope I'm wrong. I'd like because I'm a business owner and I'm a father. I just want things to be okay. Let's pay the bills and everybody go home. It's not exciting to me to see my country implode. But I think you'll start seeing more and more. People are getting tired of our politics, William. They've gone back to the well so many times, and the duopoly of these evil political parties sucking the lifeblood out of us and neutral any of our it makes me so angry to think about just looking up in the sky yesterday during the eclipse and seeing the chemtrails, and I think, okay, so above my head and spraying on children is this unauthorized thing that nobody agreed to. That's a voter. Without my consent, you're modifying the weather. What gives you that right? Again, that's the politics. I think people just start finally getting fed up with being taken advantage of and mocked, and we mock all of the people that ever served and fought for this country, regardless of the wars they were in. But I have, some of my best friends in veteran cemeteries. They love this country, and we mock. The elites mock them. So I'm not optimistic in the short run. I am for the long term. Is we continue like great shows like yours, educating people on the levels of corruption and the Luciferian systems, and how we can expose them. But it's like Cal Coolidge said: "It's nothing un-American can survive in the sunlight." And as soon as we just get some sunshine on all these people, they'll just run like roaches. They'll run off and hide, or it'll zap them real good. So, I think we have a mission to help people understand the consequences of this system continuing. But I would prepare some of the ways you can prepare for the chaos ahead is just having something outside of the system that's without third-party risk, like precious metals, or if you're educated on it, certain cryptos. I like Bitcoin. I don't sell it anymore, but I do like it, and supporting programs like yours so we can get people to think.
Yeah, there's other options. We don't need these people. Most
Nope.
of these people in DC are corrupt. They have the morals of like some of the worst people on earth. They casually send people off to die in war. Nobody's ever felt sorry for the 500,000 people who died in the Ukraine. It's so-called, and they're just lying straight to your face. There's nothing democratic about Ukraine people. They don't care. It's a huge money laundering thing that gets facilitated by fiat currency. And it's just a disaster. So there are positive things that are happening. You see the states are exerting themselves much more so. Like Abbott actually grew a pair and a spine and actually, closed the border and told the feds to go pound sand, which is, it's good. But there's other like state AGs who are actually enforcing the law, which is good. And I think that is a trend that should continue. And so there is resistance. That's not dissent. It's actually people wanting their constitutional rights. Like that's it. You're dissenting from people who don't want to give you your constitutional rights, which includes proper currency and a kind of something that isn't run by the Federal Reserve, just to kind of wrap it up. But yeah, great show. We definitely covered a lot of topics. Is there anything you'd like to add or anything I missed before we wrap it up, Tony?
I would like to tell your audience, they can't use it right this minute, but I do have a domain I'm setting up for you if you want to support William and his wonderful content. Williamramsey.Gold. Don't go to it yet because I haven't put it up. So whenever you release the podcast on the RSS feed, it'll be there by then. I'll do it this afternoon. But that's one way. And Wolfpack, the membership program that I have for gold and silver, and that's monthly, direct to your door. You can go through William's landing page on that to support him, and it helps support my company, which again, we're doing something no one else is doing, and that's like small transactions for regular people, and doing that on a recurring basis and educating you. And we buy for you, save you a little money, hopefully, and do a diverse level of products like gold backs and silver coins and fractional coins and things like that, like the pre-1965 silver. So that's through my company, Wise Wolf Gold and Silver. Again, that's Wolfpack, and we'll put that in the show notes. And I'm sorry I didn't have it up before we did the show, but I wanted to do this, kind of launch that for you. And maybe I'll come back on, like if you ever want to. We'll most likely need to do an update before the end of the year on where the hell we are as far as the economy. And I've just got my ear to the ground, all the time, looking at the markets and doing these shows, talking about it. So
yeah, I'll be back anytime. Talk about it. I mean, there's a lot to go on. Like, what's the steps that we can take to kind of take the power back? How can we? And this is one way to take the power back: taking your fiat currency and putting it into precious metals or something like that. And you have somebody like Tony to help facilitate that. So for people who may not be as with a financial advisor background or something like that, this is a very good service, just like you said, for somebody who should diversify. And we all really should think about different things, like what's the real value? Land, precious metals, actual real tangible things, wealth creation, creating a product that actually people want. Because if the inflation keeps going as it is, that's what's going to be the real value. Do you have a chicken coop that makes eggs? Can you make a product that people use? Whatever it is. So that's really scary, but yeah, that's where we're headed. So anyway, it's you can see, is the best place to reach you through your website?
Yes, so you can reach me through now has my podcast on my Arterburn.news is a place you can go to my website. You can subscribe there, or you can go to Wolfpack.Gold. Everything on Wolfpack.Gold takes you to everywhere that I am. And then I'm going to your page, WilliamRamsey.Gold.
Gotcha. So yeah, so look for mine. You can go through that, WilliamRamsey.Gold. You can find Tony at Wolfpack.Gold, or you can go here, what you're seeing on YouTube, Rockfin, and X, which is arterburn.news. So it's ARTERBURN.NEWS. Tony, thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Appreciate you.
All right, stay there.